Hi everyone, it's Casey. I thought since I made a video about my art journal number 2, I suppose I should go ahead and make an art journal number 1 video. This was the first art journal that I've ever made. I made it from an old book. I took the pages out of the book and just used the hardcover. I covered it in cheesecloth and painted it. You can see the closure is a button. And this design I did with a stencil and modeling paste, which is this molding paste here by Golden. And it turned out pretty nice. I used a pamphlet stitch to sew in my signatures. The inside cover, I used a map of Yellowstone. I went on a trip to Yellowstone with my family, and it was a lot of fun. So that was nice memorabilia to put in here. So this was my very first art journal spread. I put some washi tape on here, and I did this little drawing on the side. This is a piece of, I think it's a bag that onions came in. And I don't know if you can see the texture on there, but it's just this kind of yellow meshy kind of thing, which added some neat texture, but made it a little hard when I painted over it because I couldn't get the paint to go in all the way. But still, it creates a nice visual texture. And those are just stamps. This was kind of a hot mess. Instead of doing one spread over both pages, I kind of did one and then the other. This wasn't too bad. I have these buttons that are really fun, and I just threw those on there and a piece of silk flower. And then this is lace trim. It didn't turn out too bad. The stamp that I did here kind of didn't turn out very well. I had to put it on twice, and you can tell, but you know, it's just background. This one I worked on, and then I came back later and worked on it some more, trying to get it to turn out right. It's still kind of a mess, but it's a lot better than what it was. This is ribbon around the edge, and this is more of the modeling paste. And it's the same stencil that I used on the cover. I kind of painted it, and then I put glitter on it, and the background is fabric. But then I painted over some of the fabric, and it was too much color, and then I put some white over it, and then it looked weird, and then I added these flowers back here before I put the ribbon on, and that didn't work very well. The whole thing is just kind of a mess. It was a learning experience, I'll tell you that much. This is really kind of neat. The paper I used in here is watercolor paper, so it's pretty stiff. And you can't tell from looking at it, but the texture of the watercolor paper is really neat, especially when you put acrylic paint over the top. It kind of fills in some of the tooth, but not all of it. It makes a really rough texture. It's kind of nice. This is a quote. I was watching some YouTube video about art, and somebody had commented that they would stare at the blank page and be afraid to make a mark and ruin it. And that really struck me because I have a lot of issues, as I think a lot of artists do, with imposter syndrome, where you feel like you don't really know what you're doing, and no matter how much you do it, it's just not good enough. And so I decided to make this spread about just going for it and not being afraid to make a mark on the page. This is, there's stencil back here, but you can see it's pretty much just a mess. I just made some marks, I just threw some paint on, and decided not to be afraid of making a mess. This is a bunch of paint brushes, and I think I printed them out from the internet, if I recall correctly. And then I tore them up and glued them on. And you can see here where they kind of stuck together when I closed the page. But it's all about being imperfect and not being afraid to be creative. I think that's what stops a lot of people from being creative. People tell me all the time, oh, I can't draw a stick figure, I can't draw a straight line, I just don't know how to draw. And they would keep telling me, oh, you're so talented. And I would tell them over and over, and they would never believe me that I am actually not talented. I just practice a lot. And the thing about practicing is you have to be courageous about it. You can't be afraid to make mistakes. That's how you learn. I mean, oh my goodness, when I started out doing art, I made some truly, truly terrible art. I'll make another video about this sometime and show you the art that I used to make, but you have to start out being terrible before you can learn how to be good. And I think people just are too afraid to begin. So that's what this spread was about. This sticker tends to come off. I tried gluing it down and it's still, whatever, leave it. This one is about my physical health. I suffer from some chronic illnesses, and I have a lot of internalized ableism where I feel like I should be able to do things that everyone else can do, and I just simply can't. I don't have that kind of energy. My body doesn't work that way. So this was a reminder for me to rest. This is not my cat. I do have a cat. That's not my cat, unfortunately. This was fun. I did this, it was an art show, an art competition. And during the competition, there was a demonstration, kind of workshop sort of deal where we were supposed to bring in soft pastels and a picture of some flowers. And I don't have soft pastels. I don't like working with them because they're a big fat mess, and it's hard for me to get them the way I want them, and then what do I do with the picture? You have to fix it in such a way where it doesn't smudge, and I'm too lazy for that. So what I did was I brought these are gelatos by Faber-Castell. I have all the gelatos because I love them so very much. It's basically a watercolor crayon, and this one I think I only had one set. I had gotten one set of them. I think it was the iridescents that I used. But some of these are glittery and these are metallic, and no, it was the translucents. Yeah, it was the translucents. This was the set that I used on here. And then I outlined it with some ink, and it was great. I had a really good time. It wasn't quite within the parameters of the workshop, and I think the lady giving the workshop wasn't really pleased about it, but I thought it was great. This I did some collaging underneath. I had book pages and scrapbook paper under here. So I did some collaging before I did the top layers, which turned out pretty good. This cocoon is actually part of a paper wasp nest that I had to knock off my house. I didn't know it was there until they had stung me a couple of times. That was not a fun day. And this one I started out not really knowing what I was doing. I'm not thrilled about how it turned out, but it's okay. This nest has some kind of packing material in it that we had gotten in a box of something that came through the mail. And it was a neat texture, so I put that in there, and the eggs are fabric. This I was testing out some alcohol markers that I had just gotten. This is all stamped around the outside, the border, which I thought was really neat. It turned out good. It's really simple flowers, and then I had some texture. This is from a piece of canvas for needlepoint, plastic canvas. And I, put paint on it and stick it down, and it comes out pretty neat. I like it. The flowers are extremely simple, but I just wanted to test the markers out. This I really like. I'd gotten some new stencils, so I did this stencil. And this is scrapbook paper, and this I created with some metallic markers, and I don't remember what I used for this. This might be gelato. I think these are gelatos too, that I did on here with ink. This one kind of stressed me out a little bit because I knew what I wanted to do and I knew how I wanted it to look. And when I have an end product in mind, then it stresses me out, because if it doesn't turn out the way I want it in my head, and I get, it messes with my mind a bit. So when I start out with something that I know what I want to do, it's a little more stressful than when I just make it up as I go along. This one I did make up as I went along, and it turned out really muddy. I'm not thrilled about it. But, that's what an art journal is for. It's just for playing around and seeing what happens. I don't hate it, but I don't love it either. This one was tedious because, again, I knew what I wanted to do from the beginning, and so I worked on it, and I had to make sure I stayed inside all the pencil lines and everything, and I don't enjoy doing that. I just don't. I like kind of making a little bit more of a mess than this, but I was still transitioning between doing traditional kind of artwork where, I had a photo or I had an idea in mind, and then I would execute it step by step, and now I'm just kind of do whatever. And I find that a much more enjoyable process than this, where I get stressed out that it has to be perfect. This is an idea, or an example, I should say, of just making it up as I go along, and it turned out really great. I've got some texture in here with a stencil and the modeling paste. This is a piece of transparency film that I had cut out. This was some kind of, I think something from a magazine. It was an old sepia tone kind of photo. Might have been like a fishing license kind of thing. I don't really recall. This is book page. And I just had fun with it. And I really like the way it turned out. I like the colors. This one I love too. I started out with the stencil, and then I did some outlining with the stencil so you could really see it. And then I did these kind of bubbles. The butterflies are stickers. There's some glitter in here. And this is metallic marker. And I didn't have an idea in mind. It doesn't look like anything in particular. It was just something fun to do, and this is the kind of thing that I really enjoy doing. This was the same kind of thing, only not quite as successful. I started out, I don't know if I was journaling. I think I was just making up some sentences. I can hardly see them. And then I'd put some pictures from magazine back here that I really like the pattern of, and then I covered it up so I can't really even see it, so that didn't work out real great, but it's cohesive enough. This I wanted to do something kind of simple. I didn't want to do a lot of collaging in it. I originally didn't have these stars in here, but there was just so much white space and it looked unbalanced and a little too, sitting in class and doodling kind of thing. So I added the stars. It's okay. This one I really like. This has the collage papers in the background too. and I knew I wanted flowers, and I really wanted to be loose with them and kind of a little wild and crazy with some of the colors in it. And there's glitter all over in these flowers, which I really like. This looks, oh, this was something I cut out, so I must have printed this out and then colored it and pasted it on there. This is another one of those things. I don't know why I keep doing flowers. I'm not particularly good at flowers. Cone flowers I'm okay at. I don't know. I don't like looking at pictures of flowers because then I get lost in the details and trying to make it perfect, and I don't like that. So I just kind of try to make up flowers as I go along, and I'm not real successful at it. I do like how I did this kind of almost lacy pattern around the edge though. And music. Was I just making this up? I might have just made this up. I am a musician. I play the flute, just very flute music. But I don't think those are notes from any piece of music in particular. This one I was inspired by, I think it was Vicky on YouTube. She makes a lot of really neat things where she draws on a separate piece of paper and then cuts it out and pastes it on. So that's what I did with this, and with this one too. Yeah, that's a separate piece of paper. I made the letters. I did the little pattern in the letters. This is from I think it's from a crafting catalog. I'm not sure. And then I felt like it needed something else, so I drew this stalk of corn in here, which is not the best part of the picture, but you know, it works. This one I really like. I had done a painting of a bunch of jars on a shelf. It's in my husband's office at work, and I kind of wanted to do something like that again. And I liked experimenting with the different kinds of plants. And there's, you know, paper in the background. The only thing with the paper is that it created this line right down the middle. But, oh well. And these are all gelatos. This one is very sparkly. That's coming off on my hands. Some of these have a lot of sparkles in them, the iridescent ones. There's another one with the flowers. I don't know why I was insisting on doing all these flowers. Maybe I was trying to do it until I got it right. I don't know. It was all right. I started out doing watercolor. I wanted some loose color in the background, so I really liked how that turned out. This is where I started to get more into just kind of making marks and doing things in the background and making a little bit of a mess. And I like that. This was the first face I did. If you watched my video of my second art journal, I did a lot more faces in that one. And it was because I did this face and I really liked how that turned out. This is another fall one. Fall is my favorite season. I really like the colors. Everything in here was drawn. The leaves were printed out and colored, and this is a sticker. But I painted this and drew this. And I have some color blocks in the background. I think that's how I started. I think this is actually my jelly plate that I pressed the jelly plate onto the paper. And this was the last one. The colors are kind of a hot mess, but it was the end of my journal, and I was just kind of happy to have it done. So that's my first art journal. And if you don't know what a jelly plate is, it is a kind of squishy, piece of, I don't know what this is. But you put paint on it and you use a brayer to roll the paint out. And then you can, press papers onto it. You can make marks into it. It's, you press paper onto it and then you have pattern paper. So this I just got off of Amazon. They come in all kinds of different sizes. You can get it at Michael's or any place like that. So I may make another video sometime where I use my jelly plate to make papers and show you that process. So, well, thank you so much for coming with me on my art journal tour, and I will see you in the next video.